Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Catherine Burgum. I'm the wife of Doug Burgum. Good to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hey, we know that your most valuable asset is your time. So thanks for choosing to spend your time with us. I am actually from North Dakota. I grew up in North Dakota. My family was in the John Deere business for 40 years. So I grew up working in the John Deere dealerships, sweeping floors and mowing lawns and selling tractor parts and stuff like that. So I have an agriculture background. I guess I'll just dive into him. So you probably want to hear more about him than me. But before 2016, before he became governor of North Dakota, he had spent his entire career in the private sector. So he knows how to compete and win in a global economy. About 7 years ago, he came home and said, I think I'm going to get it. I'd like to get into the governor's race. And I had this look on my face like, what? Like, I'm like, we have a great life, you know. And he saw the look on my face and he said, well, here's the situation. It's 5 months until the primary. Our opponent's the sitting attorney general. He's been in that job for 15 years, and his family has about 100 years of name recognition because they've been in politics practically since statehood. Oh, yeah, and there's one more thing. We're down by 60 points in the polls, but we'll just give it our best shot. Well, we ended up winning that primary by 20 points. So consequently, I never thought I'd be standing in front of you as First Lady of North Dakota. And also never thought in a million years that I'd talk publicly about my struggle with addiction and my recovery. But that's what I started doing when I became First Lady. I've been in recovery from alcohol addiction for 21 years now. Thank you. So someone said the easiest, fastest, cheapest way to eliminate stigma is just by talking about it, normalizing the conversation around really behavioral health, and which includes brain health and addiction. So that's what I've been doing since I've been First Lady. We've been working on it together, and we're making huge progress in North Dakota. So then he came home and said, I'm thinking about getting in the presidential race, and we had a lot of conversations about that. But I thought that if I could, at a national level, help convene people to really focus on solving so many problems we have related to what I would call our behavioral health crisis across our nation. If I could be a part of that process as someone with lived experience, then I was all in on this journey. And so it's been an incredible journey so far. And we love Iowa. Feels so much like North Dakota. And Doug really does care about people. And he really does want to improve every American life. And when we do that, we can unleash the best of America. So please help me welcome my husband and the next president of the United States, Doug Burgum.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. I want to, like Catherine, I want to thank all of you for sharing your time with us. It is your most valuable gift. We appreciate that. And like Catherine, I do want to say we do love Iowa. This is like, it's coming south for us. We come down here to warm up. It's a gorgeous day, beautiful here, and beautiful state. And both of us coming from the small communities and ag backgrounds. It's just so great to be in such an amazing, productive state. But Catherine was from big town, 15,000 people. My hometown, Arthur, had about 300. Fabulous place to grow up. All the roads in town were gravel. The only paved road was the state highway that went through town. There wasn't a computer in there when I was growing up. But I said it wouldn't trade anything. My dad was a World War II Navy vet, had served in the Pacific as an officer on a destroyer. Fantastic guy. I learned courage and sacrifice from him, but he passed away when I was a freshman in high school. My mom was also amazing, and she was a stay-at-home mom. She was engaged in the community like a lot of parents were, on the school board, the church board, and all that. But when my dad died, she went back into the workforce and was putting food on the table, a widow with 3 kids. So I understand what a lot of families are going through. In my mid-20s, after college and grad school, I had 160 acres of farm ground that I got from my dad. That's not enough to farm in, dry land wheat farming. You need thousands of acres, but I had 160 acres of farm ground. I had seen an Apple II computer with VisiCalc, that first spreadsheet, and I was like, wow, that's going to change the world. So I quit my job in Chicago, moved back home to North Dakota, and bet the farm on a fledgling software company called Great Plains Software. And we started with 10 kids, and we worked hard, and we became an overnight success story. It just took 18 years for that overnight success story to happen, but we just kept chipping away at it. We built a company with 2,000 people. 1,200 were in Fargo, 400 rest of North America, 400 rest of the world. And we had a fantastic, successful thing going, and we got approached by one of the largest tech companies, and all 2,000 of us joined that company. And I stayed there for another 7 years building that company, and we've built a multi-billion-dollar business around the world. I had people working for me in over 100 countries. We had customers in 132 countries around the world. I had people working for me and customers in places where they didn't have the right to vote, didn't have the right to free speech, they didn't have the right to assemble. And I learned as a kid that this country, while not perfect, is exceptional. And we are amazing what our country can do and will continue to do. And after that, I left there. I got involved in building some other global software companies. I have created more jobs than everybody else on the debate stage combined. I've been signing the front of a paycheck since my mid-20s. Some of these people have only signed the back of one. And with that time in technology, was a huge help because we were in the software business. When we became governor, Catherine taught, we won the primary by 20, we won the general election by over 40. 2016 was a good year for outsiders. But in 2020, we won again by over 40 points. And we did that because what we delivered was the ability to really change and reform government in a smart way, because you can take out so much cost and improve services just by applying what every other industry has been doing for the last 2 or 3 decades. And we cut the North Dakota budget by 27%, $1.7 billion we cut out of that budget our first 4 months in office in 2017. And then we started cutting red tape, and we're still doing it. Red tape raises the cost of government. It creates a burden on all of you and all the small businesses. And we passed another 51 red tape reduction bills this year in North Dakota. So you cut expenses, you cut red tape, which also lowers the cost. And then we, get behind our economy and encourage growth and development. And so our revenues have gone up. That's allowed us to cut our taxes. And we've cut taxes every session I've been there. And this last spring, we cut taxes. We had the largest tax cutting bill in the history of the North Dakota, cutting both property taxes and income taxes. Now 60% of North Dakotans don't pay any income tax. So we know the formula on how to fix the country, and part of it, the federal government is always outside of its lane. They're always doing stuff that is not their job. There's a limited number of things the federal government is supposed to do, and I'm on the tip of the spear as a governor. There are 28 rulemaking efforts being pushed by the Biden administration right now, like a half a dozen in U.S. Fish and Wildlife, a half a dozen Bureau of Land Management, more than that in EPA. And it's like a swarm of regulations that are trying to kill agriculture and kill U.S. energy. We're fighting back and winning on a number of those. Waters of the USA, North Dakota took the lead. We won that. We won in federal court about how federal lands can be used for energy development. So we're continuing to fight all these big battles. But when we decided to jump into the presidential race, we said, wow, everybody last spring was like, oh, it's so crowded. I mean, it's like, this is the most important job in the world. And there was only like a dozen people applying, and some of them weren't qualified. So it's like, that's not crowded. I mean, if I was in the private sector, if I had 12 people apply for a job, I'd repost and said, why don't we have 100 people applying? So we jumped in. Now there's about 6 of us left. But we've got unique qualifications compared to any of them. George Will said, best qualified presidential candidate you've never heard of. And so we're the lowest name recognition, but we've got the most and the best experience to be able to tackle the big issues where the Biden administration is going the wrong direction. 180 degrees wrong on the economy, 180 degrees wrong on energy, and 180 degrees wrong on national security. And all of those 3 things are related. You have to understand all 3 of those to understand how to get this country turned around, and how for us to win the Cold War. We're winning with China. We're in a proxy war with Russia. We're in a proxy war with Iran. It's going to take leadership and integrity to get that job done. And I would say for those of you that are here from Iowa, wouldn't it be amazing if we actually had just have a candidate from the heartland? Have somebody that you could have a chance to vote for. The RNC right now is artificially trying to restrict the number of candidates. That's not the charter of the RNC. The RNC's job is to elect a Republican president in November of 2024. Their job is not to reduce the number of people that you get to caucus for in January of 2024, 2 months before the voting starts. So we passed the polling threshold for Iowa. We passed it for New Hampshire. They said you needed 70,000 donors. We have 90,000 donors. Again, this is all starting from June 7th. I'm not selling a book. I'm not running for Congress. I'm not running to be a senator. I'm not running to be a cabinet official. We're running for president because I'm an operating guy, and that's all I've ever done is build and lead high-performing teams that win on the globe. In the globe, that's what we need to do that. And then here we got the RNC is trying to think. We love being on the first and second debate. We narrowly missed being on the third debate, but it's an affront to everybody in Iowa that the RNC is trying to artificially restrict the number of candidates. So I just say thank you for showing up today. Thank you for being here. Tell your friends and neighbors. We would love to have you learn more about us at dougburgum.com. Take the literature. Tell people we're going to keep going. But right now, I just want to stop and say thank you, and then take whatever questions you might have about any of these topics, particularly as it might how you might see it's affecting Iowa. But certainly, economy, energy, and national security. We get those right, it improves every American life. We have a safe and prosperous future. Because I'm an optimist. I've seen what America can do for a small town kid like me, and what we've been able to accomplish. We can do that going forward. We're entering potentially into a huge age of abundance going forward. But we're gonna forego having another American century if Biden administration seems to have every policy they have, including their energy policies and their ag policies, seem to be designed to benefit China, not benefit the U.S. So with that, I'll just say thank you and happy to take your questions. Sir?
I think to win an election, you're going to have to switch people from voting for Biden to you. Do you have a way to do that, a method to do that, or a plan?
Well, I think you bring up a good point here, because as Republicans, we're divided right now on a lot of things. I mean, we look at Congress and how dysfunctional that is. Republicans fighting Republicans. If every single Republican in America voted for any of the 5 or 6 of us that are still campaigning, if every Republican voted for that person, 100% voted for that Republican, we still lose in November of 2024. You cannot win a national election today in this country unless independents vote for you. And in New Hampshire, the largest party in New Hampshire, it's not Democrats, it's not Republicans, it's independents. That's now the large part. People have gotten so turned off by the divisiveness that the largest, fastest growing segment is the exhausted majority in the middle that's saying, I don't agree with either party. So that's where the frustration is. When we decided to run, we said we're going to run not to win a primary or 2. We're running to win the election in November of 2024. And in November of 2024, there's 43 states that have already been decided. California and New York, newsflash, they're going to vote for a Democrat. Okay, North Dakota is going to vote for a Republican. Doesn't matter who's on the ticket. We put a map down here. We could go through 43 states. We'd all agree. Then there's 7 states left. And we'd say, okay, those are the swing states. Then we put a map up of those swing states, and we'd go, oh, wow, surprise. Every rural county in Pennsylvania is voting for a Republican. Every blue metro area in these swing states voting for a Democrat. Now we're down. There's 20 counties in America that are going to decide next year's election. And in those 20 counties, we know the addresses of the homes that voted for one party in 12. They switched in 16. They went back to the other party in 2020. Who are they going to vote for in 2024? We've got to present an alternative that would get those individuals to say, we're going to vote for a Republican. That's where this presidential election is going to be decided. As a business guy, I always said, start with the end in mind. And we started with the end in mind of how do we win that election. And every policy that we have, every policy that we're pushing on around economy, energy, and national security are things where, particularly in those cities where they're worried about crime, they're worried about the defunding of police, they're worried about everything that's going on, we can win those voters. And I know that because we hear it when we're campaigning around the country. So that's why we're in this race, because we want to have a Republican in the White House in 2024. Good evening, or good afternoon. Thanks for coming.
Welcome. If you were in California today having the conversation with Xi Jinping, if you were in California today having the conversation with Xi Jinping, what would you be talking to him about?
The two top things on my list would be the two things that the Biden administration has not talked to him about yet, and that's energy and it's food. Those two things. This is a country, China imports 10 million barrels of oil a day. They are the largest importer of energy in the world. They have no energy security. They're completely dependent on outside sources of energy. And they have to import food to feed the 1.4 billion people. And so the Biden administration goes over and talks to them, four of them there. Who's the first guy over there? Kerry. You know what they talked about? Climate accords. They talked about what are we going to do by 2050 or 2060. Meanwhile, we're in a Cold War with China right now. They got the world's largest navy. They could cut off, they don't have to invade. They just do a blockade around Taiwan, and Taiwan's out of energy in 5 days. And they say, oh, well, who cares about Taiwan? We'll build chips here. No, 30% of the world's economy goes through the South China Sea. If they blockade that, goodbye to the economies of South Korea, Philippines, and Japan. And then you watch our stock market collapse the next day, and you watch our foreign trade collapse, you watch our supply chains collapse. It'll make the COVID supply chain problem look like nothing. And every American will be like, how did we let that happen? Well, we let it happen because Joe Biden believes that appeasement is a path towards the future. So we withdraw Afghanistan, we appease Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine because all of Western Europe was dependent on their energy. And we are at such at risk right now. We 3 kids, and one just turned 30, others in their 20s. I never thought in my lifetime I would actually be talking to them about World War III. About a year ago, I started saying, hey, you better read your history, because Neville Chamberlain pulled this same act that Joe Biden is, thinking that he was going to solve all the through appeasement before World War II, and we ended up with Hitler, and we ended up with a world war for 5 years, and we ended up with 500,000 Americans dying. And like my dad, who served in the Pacific and made it, it's a miracle. There's 151 destroyers at Okinawa. His was one of them. 129 got hit by kamikazes. It's only by the grace of God I'm even standing here. And half of the MIAs in the history of the United States are Pacific World War II sailors. Those ships that went down never recovered. So are we going to go back to that? Or is that what we're headed back to? Well, I think we are. So so Biden's meeting with him, and we have 2 giant levers to use in a negotiation with someone you're in Cold War with, and we're not. What are we doing instead? Joe Biden released the sanctions on Venezuela oil exports 2 weeks ago when no one was paying attention. He released them on Iran this summer when no one was paying attention, and the ones we have against Russia don't work. And so 3 horrible, when I say horrible, or not the people, but Iranian regime, largest sponsor of terrorism, Maduro in Venezuela, 7.5 million people have fled the country. They're starving under his autocratic socialistic rule. And then we've got Russia, which isn't really a country anymore. It's Putin as a mob boss who's killed his enemies. Don't like your political opponent? Shoot him on a bridge in broad daylight in Moscow. Poison them in UK, and then blow up a plane full of them, with Prigozhin and the Wagner Group. I mean, literally, he's a mob boss. He's worth about $100 billion right now. He gets a cut off of all the oil production, and then we act like we're meeting with a president from another country. No, it's a large criminal organization, and the Russian people are suffering. The Iranian people are suffering. The people in Venezuela are suffering and are actually fleeing that country, and so. What do those 3 countries have in common? They're all buddies of China, because China needs their oil. China needs their oil, and we're talking about 2060 climate accords as we're catapulting towards World War III. So there'd be plenty to talk to him about, when in this meeting. But it would start with our strengths as opposed to talking about something that they don't care about. China is the world's largest polluter. They're opening up a coal plant every week. They have 260 of them permitted. They're happy that we keep sending people over there. They're very happy that we're releasing these oil sanctions, because they're getting discount oil and gas from Russia. I'm sure that every farmer in Iowa would like to get discounted diesel. but they're not. But China was getting it to 20% off from Russia, and then those oil transactions for the first time in history are happening in yuan, not in US dollars, which threatens our dollar reserve currency, which then, and when the dollar reserve currency is gone, there doesn't have to be a World War III. You will not be able to do what we do in this country, which is spend more than we bring in, if we don't have people buying our debt. And even last week, the debt sales of the federal government were struggling, and it's one of the reasons why they got to keep raising the interest rates to get people to buy our debt. So we're careening off a cliff under all these things. And then, oh, and by the way, San Francisco, U.S. businesses, small businesses, all closing and shutting down and closing their doors in San Francisco because of the issues with crime and homelessness that are unaddressed. And then they take Gavin Newsom and they decide to clean up San Francisco because we've got a foreign, a communist dictator coming into town, and we can do it for him, but we can't do it for all those businesses that have gone out of business in that community. Other than that, I don't feel passionate about it, but thank you for asking. Sir? Mr. Hanson, the vision for America is pretty clear, which is we have this incredibly bright future. We've got we've built all of our success around innovation, not regulation. So part of the vision is we've got to get back to not thinking. We have generations of people that think the federal jobs government is to come up with one size fits all rules that get applied across 50 states, across all kinds of ecosystems, across all kinds of time zones, across all kinds of latitudes. That matters because batteries don't work as well in North Dakota as they do in Florida. But no, we're going to have one rule that fits everything. Drives me nuts because it's like the states created the federal government. It's okay if 50 states want to do things differently. We have 50 platforms of innovation. That's how we compete. So you start downsizing the federal government just by stopping doing the things that they're not supposed to do. Return the power to the states or to the people, like it says in the 10th Amendment. And so there's just so much opportunity for us. I mean, our economy could be just screaming. It is in North Dakota. We got the highest GDP of any Republican-led state in the nation by just the thing. Reduce the size of government, cut taxes, cut red tape, and then encourage innovation. When people say, oh, we got a problem, we need to pass a bill to stop XYZ, we're like, tell us about the problem. Okay, could we solve that with a new innovation that would be cheaper, faster, whatever, wouldn't require a federal employee in a pickup with a clipboard driving around to see if when you have a regulation, you have to monitor to see whether they're actually following the regulation. So every regulation just adds cost, and that cost shows up in every product that all of you buy. All of us, everybody. Inflation is driven by regulation. You want lower price stuff? Innovate, don't regulate. So our country is the only one that can do it. We're the free country we have. The innovations that we've had, whether it's flight itself, computers, the internet, now with artificial intelligence, I mean, all of these things benefit us because we've got 10 million jobs open. China can't try to drive for more productivity. They're having a crisis. They have unemployment in the 20% range of people 18 to 25. If they got if they have more productivity, then more people are out of work. I mean, they're afraid of it because their whole model of 7% of the population of 1.4 million being in a single political party, it's unrest from the people that will take them down. We have an opportunity to just push the pedal on innovation and get more productive and fill these 10 million jobs. Fill the 10 million jobs or make some of those 10 million empty jobs go away through innovation. We can do it. I mean, having that discussion in just this morning, about that, which is productivity is one of the ways to solve the workforce issues in rural America, is us get more productive with more innovation. So there's so much we can do. Anyway, I get super excited about the future. My whole life, I've been about doing stuff that people said couldn't be done. Everybody said you can't build a global software company in Fargo, North Dakota. I was told that 1,000 times. If you move to Silicon Valley, then maybe you can do it. No, we did it there. We know we can do it, and I know that we can do it all over our country. Innovation isn't exclusive to one state or one part of our country. There's great people everywhere. We just have to create the environment for them to thrive. Okay, I'm being told I got time for one more question, but I'm going to since I already went here, I'm going to go here. Ma'am, I love your hat, by the way.
What's your opinion on school choice and defending the government Department of Education?
Well, school choice and Department of Education. I'm absolutely for school choice, and I've said that I'm not sure why we have a Department of Education, but I'm not the first candidate. I'm not the first president. Ronald Reagan in 1980 said we should get rid of the Department of Education. So apparently we've had 43 years of people trying to get rid of it. It's not the biggest agency. I mean, it's got less than 10,000 employees. That sounds like a big number, but compared to the 2 million in federal government, it's one of the smallest ones. But most of what they do, the issue is that when they take federal dollars and they give it to a state, now it's being tied to a bunch of ideological hooks, like you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do that before you can get the money. And it's not student-centered, it's not outcome-centered, it's education. There's like, oh, we need more money, we need more money. No, it's not about more inputs, it's about better outcomes and better outcomes. So in North Dakota, we have not yet gotten, Kim Reynolds has done a great job here with this thing. Arizona, Doug Ducey did a great job. We have not gotten there in North Dakota. Our legislature last year couldn't get a package that I could agree with in terms of it, because it was the rural community said, wow, school choice would be great, but we're 50 miles from the next school. We have smaller population in a much smaller population in even a larger state than Iowa. So these rural areas are like, wow, the school choice thing is just going to help, parochial schools in Fargo and Bismarck. It's not going to do anything for us. What we have done, it doesn't have as easy a name as school choice, which I believe in completely and 100%, because school choice means competition, and you can tell I'm a guy that loves competition. But what we have done is we have stripped the red tape from our schools. We passed a innovation policy 5 years ago where you can get an innovation waiver, and then all of a sudden schools, instead of having to be, the kids have to be there 181 days for X number of hours per day, why are we measuring butts and seat time? That's an input. You could be there all 181 days, never miss a day, and not learn a thing. So why don't we change it to what the outcomes are, and let's give them the thing. And then they came and said, the education leaders came and they said, wow, the best way for students to learn is through hands-on, team-based, real-world learning, with certificates. And I'm like, that sounds a lot like FFA. That sounds a lot like 4-H. That sounds a lot like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Turns out it is. In some of these programs, FFA, you can get a certificate in cybersecurity. In Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, you can get like 3 or 4 or 5 merit badges that are health related. And yet the kid would have 5 of those, and then we'd make them get a half a credit a health class, and they'd have to sit through a class of stuff they already know. So we got rid of all these requirements, and we said, wow, FFA, 4-H, and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, these organizations accredited, they can actually use the school building. And if you've got a bunch of 4-H or FFA or certificates, it counts towards your graduation. So now all of a sudden that kids are doing this stuff, and FIRST Robotics, other things they're doing. Like now they can pursue what they want to do, and then we can put in a bunch of career and technical education, which will help them do that. And we took our COVID dollars, because we remained open during COVID. We didn't need all the COVID dollars for that. We got a waiver from the federal government. We pushed $100 million into CTE. So now we're going to have regional career and technical education for kids. And we've got kids they earn their first year of an associate degree well in high school. Their freshman year is the second degree. I have literally myself met with kids in October of what was their freshman year, and they already had $72,000 a year job offers, working as power plant managers and, working as CAD CAM specialists and doing other stuff. And they'll have zero college debt, unlike the $1.6 trillion of student debt that we piled on students in an effort to subsidize higher education, which didn't help the students, and it didn't help us get more students or better students. It helped us hire more administrators that are often teaching things that aren't the things that we want our kids to be taught about our country. So that's we have not got there quite on the school choice, but man, we have tackled everything else. And the last thing I'll say is, in every state I've been to, everybody's fighting. Unions, school, the teachers union and the administrators and the school boards. Those are like the 3 big lobbyists that have their thing, and they all come and they all fight, and then the parents barely have a voice and the students have no voice. We said, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if before the legislative session happened and it becomes this big brawl, where I'm for this and I'm against that, what if we got everybody in the room? So we passed a law in North Dakota called the K-12 Coordinating Council. The governor, the independent elected head of Department of Instruction, the teachers union, the school board association, the parents, and the School Administrators Association and some legislators all are part of this 20-person group, and they're required by law to meet multiple times ahead of a legislative session and come up with joint recommendations on what they can agree with. So I'm fortunate. I'm the only governor that I know of in the country that can actually get in a room with all of the people that are normally opposed to each other and say, no, yes, we're not here for, superintendent pay increases. We're not here for this. We're here for the student. The student is at the center of the discussion. What are we going to do for the students this session? What are we doing for the students this session? That's what's driven a bunch of this innovation. So we got. This is what you do. You get blocked on one thing where rural legislators wouldn't support school choice because they didn't see value, but we charged the other way, and we drove a half a dozen things where we basically turned every school district, 175 of them, in innovation school districts to give them the flexibility to give the choices that our kids need to have. And we've required civics requirement. You got to be able to pass the test, the citizenship test to graduate, and we've got cybersecurity and computer science requirements for K through graduate school. Not just like, you take one class when you're a senior. If you're a fourth grader and you're said you got to go on the internet to do a thing, your teacher needs to explain to you how to be safe on the internet when you're a fourth grader. And if you're a grad student working on a project and you don't want the Chinese to steal your ag research on your ag tech, you've got to understand how to be secure in what you're doing. So we got the first in the nation curriculum around cybersecurity. So anyway, pick any topic. I can talk too long about it. But happy to do it. But anyway, I know we're wrapping up here. We want to say we got to get off to our next event, but super grateful for all of you here. If anybody wants to grab a quick picture with Catherine and I, happy to do that. Love to have you, again, take home the literature, take a caucus card, do what you can, spread the word. We'd love to see you again, but we're going to continue working hard right up till the Iowans are caucusing, and you can count on us. North Dakota kids, nobody outworks them. So thank you for being here today.